Okay, let me try and condense everything that I've said before in all those thousands of videos. The only God you could love with all your heart, soul, mind and strength would be the personification of what you value. And when you put your mind and heart to such loving, your values change because of your experience in doing so. And dare I say it, but all the crud of scripture falls away and you're left with an essence of what you still feel you truly value, but it's different to what you started with, in a way. And in a way it isn't. You loved others and wanted to love more, but it didn't seem to fit. And now it does seem to fit, that you want to love all life, care for all life. You don't want to eat your friends. You don't want to eat meat. I pick on that because that's a very sort of practical sort of expression of it. I don't want to kill the flies. I'd rather they had their habitat, but not in my kitchen. So I put them out. I don't have to kill them. But the ants, oh my goodness, how do I get all those ants out the kitchen? When they invade, I mean, occasionally in life, don't they? Well, you wait till evening, and they go home to bed. And then you, this sounds trivial, but you put washing up liquid round where they would come into the house. And they don't want to cross it. And they give up. They don't come your way anymore. And you haven't had to kill them. But you have restored the sanctity of your kitchen. I mean, this is absurd to a practical world that's living with the most appalling abattoirs and in some societies apparently death camps. I'm not going to touch it. Whatsoever is good and lovely, you think on these things, or you'll be dragged down and you'll be the victim of your own depression. You're going to control the mind. You seek the final victory, the mastery over yourself. I control the mind. And I've done it with temptation, and you have. You've given up petty addictions. If you really look at it, as a child, you may have pinched a few things, and mum and dad said, you can't do that, love. You'll wreck your life. Or you've realised, oh my goodness, society comes down on you like a ton of bricks if you steal. And you put stealing behind you. And perhaps you put it behind you so far back now that you've forgotten you did that. You did it when you were 7. Wow. You were developing at a fantastic rate. Bless you. That's what's so fantastic and adorable about kids, isn't it? Wow, don't they grow up? How old are you now, love? 9. I remember when you were born. Do you see what we treasure is love? It's a very simple story, isn't it? It's one that I got before I gave myself to some scripture, for goodness sake. I care for life. I don't want the fish to be hurt that I'm fishing. I think I'll stop fishing. I like going by the lakes and the ponds and the canals, but I don't want to hurt the fish. I was in a quandary, wasn't I, as a kiddie? Wow. Lovely soul. Oh, Marshall, love yourself. Of course we love ourselves. How could we not when our parent showers love on us? Hopefully a parent has, or grandma or someone. they made a lot of us. They built us up. They built our confidence. Perhaps they didn't do it enough. Perhaps we'll try and do it better in our life. I may not have experienced a perfect dad, but I've got a good idea of what I think one might be, and I want to be that perfect dad to my son or my daughter. I'm patting myself on the back here, but isn't that lovely? I'm not talking about me, I'm talking about you. Do you know, it's said by the psychiatrists and psychologists and so on, that every parent feels a bit guilty. They wanted to be a better parent than they were. They judge themselves heavily, perhaps too heavily, because life's not easy, not that simple. And I didn't spend the time with my kids that I should have done, or I was too strict, or, well, I was not strict enough in protecting them. You know, you're never fully right on review. In hindsight, you could have always done better. The story comes to our rescue. Says, of course, you were a kiddie too. Don't worry about it, love. We all go through that. But look how it's improved you. Look how it's made you resolve to be yet a better person. You are wonderful. And I'm going to take the credit away now by saying, because that's the way God made you. We are the product of our parents. I might say their loving kindness, and it was never enough from their point of view. But it can be enough from ours. We can choose to love our mum or our dad or our God and be incredibly blessed by it. I was going to say the reward is all ours, but it's not, you know. When our kids appreciate us and love us, we are on top of the world. How much more our Heavenly Dad? Do you know you are the reason for his living eternally? He loves his kids. And that is the essence of the Jesus story. And I will have none of what the rest is accredited to it. I know there are words in there about judgment and, you know, well, there's all sorts of things you can criticize it with if you're of a mind to. Well, I take out what I truly value. The notion that God is our dad and loves us and is able to love all of us, which we are not, because we're kids. But we do it on a small scale. You might love your dog because it's an adorable fluffy puppy and is playful. Good on you. You're learning to love. And we delight in what our kids have achieved. Isn't that wonderful? This parenthood is in Mother Duck on the lake with her 12 tiny fluffy ducklings, and families that are out for an afternoon walk stop and feed the ducks. And the kiddies say, there's a dog over there, look. Oh yes, love. Oh, that's a nice dog, isn't it? There's something in us that loves life. Isn't that just purely beautiful and wonderful? Don't we respond to the what we see as purity, what we ascribe to the child as purity, you could cynically say it's utter selfishness and self-interest, but no, we're their mum or their dad, and we see them as they can do no wrong. The purity of the child. And you love us, Heavenly Dad. I know what I value. And I would rather trust in that than trust in anything else. And trust is of the essence of things, because hope is the essence of things, because I don't know anything for certain. Not even that I'm not dreaming at the moment, or carried away on some fantasy. But I know what I value. And of course, I therefore choose to trust it, hope for it, pursue it. It's like the starry-eyed young man again, who sees this beautiful girl, and he can't do anything but think of her. He's entranced and in absolute bliss and happiness. The whole world is singing to him. He's in love. He can cope with anything, conquer all. And yet he's no menace to anyone because he's away with the fairies. Oh, you can't do anything with him, mate. He's in love. Do you know the rule? Supposedly, anyway, I don't know if it was make-believe, but in ancient Israel, the man who's married, you don't send him to war. He's useless. He has a year off with his wife. Get it out of his system. He'll be no use to society until he's come down from this romantic experience. How lovely. So, anyone who's just got married wasn't taken off to war to fight and die and so on. That would be a tragedy. Because he's experiencing heaven at the minute, and we won't take it away from him. Bless you. I've got sidetracked, or have I? Perhaps I haven't. Perhaps I've wandered into the very heart of things, where our heart lies. Like Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, even if our God doesn't rescue us from the fiery furnace that you're threatening us with, still we could not love you. For I do not love fear and judgment and naked aggression and power and all that stuff. I know what I value, and I ascribe that to my God. He's my dad, and a wonderful dad, and he dwells in me. And I very earnestly confer with him with every difficulty life throws at me. And I find I cope so much more wonderfully the better for doing such. So I know the way I'm going. And that's what Shadrach and Meshach were saying, you know, if he doesn't rescue us, still we could not worship you. We know what we value, and we choose to trust in that, and nothing else. And our parents, ideally, and God, ideally to us, do the same. They hold firm, they have integrity. They love us when we're doing things wrong, when we're going astray and driving them up the wall. They still try to love us. How much more your God, in your view? Who else could you love? Bless you. And you are blessed. For the child grows up, he knows not how. He may be worried at school or even at home like Marshall was, but still he grows up. And in the end, he looks back and says, well, it was hard going at times, but God got it right. Love you, Heavenly Dad. My hope and my trust is accordingly. And how could I have peace of mind but by choosing this hope rather than any other? Would you want to believe in a God that didn't love you but was all-powerful? Oh my goodness, yes, you might obey and be utterly obedient and submissive, a slave to, but you wouldn't love. Whereas our God in the form of Jesus story preaches a person, a wonderful person that always loves, has an integrity that never fails. And this is what's known as singing the praises of God, isn't it? And what does that do? It lifts us. Why? Because we focus on what we value instead of everything that's wrong in the world. Do you see a life of praise and thanks? Obviously would lead to glory, if you like, transcendence. And it's not what we do in the world if we're not careful. We get swept along with Jehovah's Witness story. Haven't you noticed all that's gone wrong in the world? Don't you think we need God? It's their approach, isn't it? It's a hard sell. But the Jesus story is not a hard sell. It's an example of some notion of what you might take to be the loveliest of persons, reflecting a lovely relationship with a God that he sees as Dad, instead of that appalling Old Testament view of God that not only the Old Testament has, but the books accredited to Paul have too. They say nothing of the story of Jesus, really, when you look at it, apart from the communion. The night he was betrayed, he took bread and gave thanks. That's really the only bit. Paul's view is the Christ, not Jesus, really. And everything Paul says is backed up with the Old Testament, which is a very old view of God, and a frightening one that does bring obedience and fear and submission, and may make you a very clone-like slave to society and be very useful from that perspective. But it doesn't bring you life eternal. And love does. The young man who falls in love, the whole world's singing to him. He hears the birds. He now sees the trees and the leaves in autumn that he's kicking through. He's springing down the road as if there were no gravity. He's flying in the morning. The sun and the new day is an exhilaration to him. Why? Because he's fallen in love. Sorry to say it just from the man's point of view, but in this tiny life I'm in, it's the one I'm closest to. Perhaps in an Eastern view in my next wife I'll be a a young maiden who's fallen in love with this fantastic prince. I'm not talking about the physical, I'm talking about the way your whole being is transformed by an overwhelming experience of loving. And you can live, you can take eternity, you can storm heaven in the same way that you fall in love with your idea of the perfect God and trust him to put your ideas more right as the days pass. And the days pass very quickly. I'm 77 already. It's rushed by. But it wasn't wasted. By the grace and the loving kindness of God our Dad, not one moment of your life is wasted. For he is able, I am persuaded, to keep that which you've delivered. You put your hope and your trust in what you truly at heart value. Bless you. Now hold to it as best you can. Whatsoever's good and lovely, think on these things. And you may get tremendous encouragement by reading John 17. And I'll say it again, don't worship Scripture. All right? But don't be oblivious to the blessings it can give you. And when everyone else seems to go astray and be talking about theology and judgment and redemption and crucifixion and atonement and sacrifice and, oh my goodness, shut your ears if you possibly can. Whatsoever's good and lovely, think on these things, and you'll be transported away with the fairies, as the world sees it. Transcendent, as you will experience it, as you've never fallen in love so before, an eternal love with your eternal friend, and not God alone, I might point out, but with an incredibly vast host of persons that have done likewise and still do with you for eternity. Thank you, Heavenly Dad.
Goodness, where did that lot come from? Well, I know. But to be a bit more light-hearted, let me say, don't do what I do, do what I tell you. If you think I'm some beautiful, consistent harmony with this lot every moment of life, you'd be very much mistaken. But my goodness, I am the happier and blessed for it. Thank you, Heavenly Dad.